Hello and welcome to the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US, a podcast in which we explore the mind-bending world of global supply chain, covering topics such as automation, innovation, unique identity, and more. I'm your co-host, Reed.
And I'm Liz.
And welcome to the show.
So Reed, today we get to talk about blockchain, what it is, what it isn't, and how it can take a really messy supply chain and make it more efficient. Are you ready?
I am so ready.
Awesome. So I would like to welcome Don Durham, Vice President of Customer Solutions at PLM, to the show. We are so looking forward to this conversation. And first, Don, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at PLM.
Sure, great. Thank you very much, Liz. I'm glad to be here today. So one of the things that PLM is a fleet management company. So we manage north of 15,000 refrigerated trailers in North America. We do transport food safety training, and we have a net carbon zero refrigerated trailer now. And that actually runs off all electricity, so no more diesel. The other thing we have is a product called PLM TrustLink, and that is really a connectivity software solution for supply chain. So a little bit about me. I've been working for PLM for 26 years. Prior to that, I was a law enforcement officer. So for 26 years, I've been crawling around in distribution centers across the world and looking at supply chain handoffs, really to build a better refrigerated trailer. And through that, I really gained some internal knowledge of workings within supply chain itself and all the handoffs that actually happen in there. So I've traveled the world. I've been in Europe, Asia, Africa, looking at supply chains and consulting with both businesses and also governments in that. Recently, I testified in front of a joint congressional agriculture committee, both the House and the Senate, on really supply chain resiliency and really the vulnerabilities that we have in supply chain these days and utilizing technology to cover those up, really driven by the recent pandemic that we had. I have authored a number of articles and white papers in a supply chain committees. And so some of the white papers I've written is the best practices of sanitary to meet sanitary transportation rules. Yeah, probably do that again. Anyway, so that's what we're looking for is, so that's a little bit about me.
Great. Well, we appreciate you taking the time to be with us, Don, and dropping some knowledge and clarifying some environments. Blockchain has been around for some time now. I mean, it's hit the main stage. There's no doubt about it. I see a lot of conversations. I just had one with my in-laws came in for a week here, and we were talking, and at lunch it came up, what are you doing with Bitcoin? Is it this, is it that, and Ethereum and all? And I was like, whoa, lots of questions here. So maybe, I know you have an analogy that you use to kind of help explain blockchain and cryptocurrencies and stuff. Can you share that with us now?
My analogy is that, I really don't know how electricity comes out of the wall to power this laptop that I have here. Okay, we all just accept that. We have to start accepting things. I accept that electricity comes out of the wall, and I accept when I send an email out that it's going to get to the party that I'm speaking with. So that's kind of my analogy and what I'm looking at.
I love the fact that you've taken that ultra simplified, right? It's what you're, in essence, if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is, I'm accepting blockchain. It's here. It's technology, and really smart people put it together, and they're working through things. And just like everything else, cars get better every year. We didn't have seatbelts before. Now we do. We didn't have airbags. Now we do. We didn't have, automatic braking systems, and now we do. They just continue to get better. We find tweaks and do things along. But it sounds to me like, why waste the time trying to figure it out when you're just going to use it and leverage it? You don't need to know everything that's under the cover. It's just, how can I use it? Is that where you're getting at?
Yeah, people are frozen right now and not wanting to move forward when you talk about blockchain because they think Bitcoin, okay, the rise and fall of that, and that's not what it is. So let's go to a definition about what blockchain is, and then let's kind of break it down. So blockchain is simply a secured, shared, distributed ledger that facilitates the process of recording transactions and tracking assets in a trusted business network. Okay, simply the way you can think about this in today's world, we live in a world of centralized databases. Okay, the cloud. Okay, the very popular cloud. So if I'm a bad actor, I can go to Liz's cloud, okay, and she has 100 people looking at data into that cloud. It's a single point, okay? As a bad actor, as long as I can get into that single point of reference, I can change data there. Once I change that data, all 100 of her users are actually looking at that particular data. So to them, that is truth, that is trusted. That's why we have all these data breaches that are going on right now that we've all heard about throughout the years, and why blockchain is so interesting. So instead of that ledger, okay, that Excel spreadsheet living in one place, now it's going to live in 100 computers of part of Liz's network. Okay, so that Excel spreadsheet is in all of our our laptops, our nodes. Okay, and now a bad actor has to change all of them in near real time in order to get that for us to be able to take a look. It's nearly impossible to do that. So then there's your security for this. So that's kind of a really simple way of like, what is blockchain? It's a distributed ledger, doesn't live in the cloud or a single point.
Yeah, I've heard also the analogy of it's like writing in pen versus writing in pencil, right?
Yeah.
So that you can't erase it and rewrite as that bad actor to something new.
Right. So what you're talking about is a block is actually performed, okay, every 10 minutes, okay? And once that block is done, it's cement, okay? The only way you can change the block, you cannot change the block, you can change the terms and conditions by adding another block to it. So you have a historical record of all the types of changes that are made in there. So that's what gives you that truth. We can decide on what the price is of something, and that can be recorded all along the blocks when they link. Okay, so pen and pencil, very good analogy.
Yeah, I like that. You secured, shared, digital ledger. What jumps out for me is I remember being a kid and watching some movies and asking my dad, like, what do they mean by cooking the books? Like, are they actually putting books in an oven? Like, I didn't get. And actually, one of my kids asked me that question a little while ago, like, well, what's this blockchain? And it stops cooking the books. And I'm like, well, to your point, it cements the information in. I like that analogy as well. It cements the information in to an Excel spreadsheet. And as I say to my kids, in the olden days, when we wrote it on paper in books, and these books were called ledgers. And so now it's just an electronic ledger. But what blockchain is helping do is to reduce the opportunities for people to cook the books, fudge the numbers, change things post when they've happened. So I love your analogy of cementing them in.
Yep.
That was very good. Because as you were saying, the pen thing, I used to think that too until yesterday when my son said, hey, I need to go to Target. I need to buy erasable pens. I'm like, what?
I'm telling you, they're the best invention ever. I use them all the time.
Okay. All right. So
that's a bad analogy. So
yeah.
So building on that, because it sounds done like you have, you had a piece of blockchain and then you kind of immersed yourself in it to learn about it. Was there a tipping point when you realized, okay, I've heard about it. Now I really want to lean into it and see how it can work and how it can benefit, your organization and the overall supply chain?
Right. Very, very, very good. So I'm actually in charge on our fleet wheel of safety and compliance within our business, and that includes food safety. So in transportation, of course, I'm immersed in the food world. Okay, the connectivity of the food world. So FSMA, the Food Safety Modernization Act, really pushed us to start to look at how can we connect supply chain. We have all these different ERP systems, legacy software systems. Nobody's connected here. And so blockchain really made sense around really how can I connect all these disassociated networks to one centralized place where this stuff could go and people would trust it. And then really for supply chain into food, it's a 2% business pushing food down the supply chain. So there's not much money. So people looking to really deploy this are looking at it from a standpoint of what's this going to cost me? What do I have to do additional? So the best scenario is really the discussion is really how does it actually save you money? So we have a couple of things so the next thing really where we're really looking at is the FDA has come out with the 204 rule, the enhanced traceability list. I know GS1 is all over this. Okay, I've been on your webinars, your seminars, so I'm looking at it too about the requirements of key data elements and also the key tracking elements that have to go through supply chain for this enhanced traceability. It's not everything, but it's a significant amount of food that we're looking at, and all the requirements. Of course, we don't have the rule yet; still in the dark house until FDA puts it into the registry, which could be any day now. And so those are some of the things we're looking about, and really these vulnerabilities were really exposed during the pandemic, right? So in this country, we have two ways of consuming food. Okay, Reed, you either getting your food from a restaurant or you're getting it from a grocery store, right?
Right.
So those are the two methodologies that we have. And think about in March, okay, when the pandemic happened, okay, what was the only place you could get food at?
The grocery store.
Grocery store, okay. So you may not know, but in January of 2020, just before the pandemic came out, the Restaurant Association did a study, and they said 51% of the food that Americans consume, 51% of the dollar spend, was in restaurants.
Yeah, it was a big. I saw that study actually because it was a big push. It was a big change in our societal lifestyles. Like growing up, when I was a child, I think it was only like 12 to 15%, and the high end was 25% to eat out as versus eating at home.
Right, and how soon after the pandemic? I know I'm asking you questions, but how soon after the pandemic did they shut down restaurants?
Yeah, it was right away. It was right away. You couldn't go to the restaurant, and we saw that. We talked about the supply chain issues because we all saw the things of dumping out milk. Like, why are we dumping the milk? Well, because it's in for food service delivery, not consumer consumption packaging. So, like, the schools had plenty of milk, but the grocery stores didn't have milk, and we couldn't quickly move them between the two.
Right. So there's your challenge. The vulnerabilities we have is that you have two different supply chains, grocery and restaurant. Let's just call them that for ease. And when one shuts down, there's no visibility on the other. And we live in a world of one up, one back. That's a huge challenge. So think if we had the ability to take a look at our supply chain in a blockchain, and you could actually see everything that was going on in that supply chain, and then you would be able to pivot. You would be able to take that milk and then move it over to grocery. And so again, we talked about how, in the U.S., food is cheap, right? I mean, we spend the least amount probably of any nation as a percentage of our income on food itself, as opposed to other nations. So blockchain gives us that ability to take a look at supply chains in totality and be able to drive efficiencies there that we're not getting right now. We have to have a common language, and we have to be able to look at everything and be able to tell what it is. If you've got multiple languages around and what they mean, it's like a miner may be different in West Virginia than on a blockchain. So you have to really start to understand. We have to have a common language across the board to be able to have that conversation. That's just been a big challenge with industry as we all get into our conversations and we learn our lingos, and then we just feel because we're excluding other people, right?
We're living in our bubbles.
Yeah, I mean, GS1 is the perfect example of the industry coming together and really giving those standards and that communication to be able to, when we're looking at something, we all understand the same thing.
Okay, well, we really appreciate you saying that. I wanted to just take this a step further. We're talking about blockchain. Are there new skill sets that we need to be able to deal with blockchain? And what do you see as the biggest payoff of moving to blockchain where we aren't today? And I think I know the answer. You already got to it. I just had this down, but you talked about secure and shared. So I think that's it. But so just focus on the skill sets maybe then that we might need.
Give you a classic example. And what blockchain is trying to do is remove the complexity out of what we're doing. So when I'm recording these critical tracking events, because that's where things go wrong. It's the handoffs in supply chain is where things go wrong. So we're working with a beef processor. Okay, so one of the unique things that I'm able to do, we're utilizing an IoT device called RFID, and so we're kind of making it touchless world. During this COVID world, we're really looking for a touchless world where I don't have to utilize direct engagement that you have to do with a barcode. The other thing we were using is I have a temperature logger on the pallet itself. Okay, these are very important. When you put product on a third-party logistics companies, you really don't know what the temperatures are until they report them back to you, if they actually do. And what we're doing is many people might not know, but you're really looking at discharge air or return air on a refrigerated truck. It doesn't tell you exactly what your product is in the pallet position. So we have that ability to be able to, when you scan it, when it comes at the dock level, we can share what the temperature was. It's a continuous logger that's on there. So it's very unique. The processor doesn't really want to share the actual data. They want to share, they want the data, okay, and they want to make that determination. So what we do is we give them a red light, green light. Here's the tolerance levels. Did you meet that expectation? It's red light or green light or yellow. Here's what you get. But immediately when it's scanned and received, the operator or the processor gets that information. They can make that determination. So I want everybody to understand is you don't have to share everything. You're just sharing under permission base. So if I'm looking at the blockchain, I'm not necessarily going to share with you all of my my competitive vendors that I use. Okay, so those are the skill sets I think you have to have come in. What do I understand about blockchain, and how does this help me reduce my cost in there? What are those engagements? What are those handoffs in there? So, but I would like to talk a little bit about, really about what blockchain is giving you. And it's really about, because when you're pushing food, like I said before, it's a 2% business. So, FDA is reporting that since the Food Safety Modernization Act was passed, incidences of food recalls have actually gone up 92%.
Wow.
Yeah. So Grocery Manufacturers Association says that those recalls cost $10 million average. So we recently heard about a chicken producer, and I think there was something like 4 or 5 million pounds of chicken to be recalled. So again, it goes out. One, I know where I sent it. Where did it go after that? If you had a blockchain and you were recording those critical tracking events, that producer could look at the blockchain and say, you know what, it hasn't entered the consumer area yet. So I know exactly where this food is at. Okay. Do I have to make the big production? We're doing recalls, and then retailers get caught up in that. So multiple retailers are on that. And so people will naturally, 55% of people will not buy your product during a recall. All right. 15% state that they'll never come back. That's through a Pew study. It wasn't until just last year that people were consuming the amount of lettuce that they used to consume back before 2018 when the lettuce recalls in Yuma. So that's the impact to industry is it may not impact just this one brand, but it impacts the commodity across the supply chain. Yeah. And that's the important thing. So if we had a blockchain and you're looking at it, you could bring truth to it.
Yeah. It seems like it could prevent that category killer, whatever the category is, right? So romaine or spinach or what have you. And I think that we're getting tripped up. I know that, I've had conversations and this whole theme of just kind of keep it simple, right? This can enable the ability for us to share information to really streamline and keep the supply chain resilient and able to react quickly to increase and help food safety and lots of other things. So one of the other questions I have about blockchain, you touched on it, is how blockchain can address the identifying, the capturing, and then sharing data out in a more efficient and accurate way. And I think you've kind of already touched on some of that, but the interoperability piece too. So does everybody have the same blockchain? And if anybody could see me, I'm almost using air quotes, because we hear it called the blockchain. Do people need their own blockchain? And how does one kind of get started and make sure that they're doing things to enable trading partners to talk to each other efficiently?
Yeah, really great question. There are many blockchains. There are specific blockchains that are driven towards food, pharma. There are general blockchains, hyperledger, all these blockchains. And I don't want to get too confused on the multiple blocks. And blockchains can actually talk to one another too. So even though you're on one blockchain, it can feed the data to another blockchain. So you're linking those together. It's almost the wild, wild west right now to what we're looking at, because it would be great if there's just like the internet or the blockchain, but there's not right now. And so there's numerous companies out there that are doing blockchain. I really focus in on how do you get the data that's truthful to the blockchain is really within your ERP system and what you're doing. I'll give you an example because I'm a storyteller. Okay, so one of the things that that was done in the trucking world is that there's a lot of detention time that goes on, and to build and there's a lot of argument that goes on between shippers and receivers in there. So a shipper and receiver, typically they look at a 2-hour wait time to be able to offload and to join there, to be able to move on. And there's a detention pay can range anywhere from $25 to $100. So just in a recent survey by the Federal Motor Carriers Safety Administration, the FMCSA, if you're in the transport business, you know who those guys are. And they looked at it and saw that there was probably about more than 3 hours of detention time on there. Why is that important? And how is that actually being gauged? Okay, so think about today we have trucks that have what they call ELDs, electronic logging devices. Okay, we used to do that by paper logs, and drivers have to take their breaks at certain periods of times. Those are all done by the truck now. Okay, so when a driver is sitting there, he might say, well, I'm offloading, so I'm taking a break. No, not really. You're still on duty. So the electronic log is still logging that in. And so they did a study and they released it in 2018. And what they found out that there was a reduction of earnings of $1.1 billion in this detention time. All right. So if I have an IoT device like a electronic logging device, if I have a geofence, when it hits that geofence, I can log that and feed that up into a blockchain. And so what does this really mean? Well, it's an impact industry of $302 million annually for these truck companies, okay? And additionally, the report actually found out that for every 15 minutes that a driver is detained in dwell time, it increases his accident rate by 6.2%. So it impacts the industry very much. And so there's a major retailer up in Canada. And this is where blockchain becomes very interesting. Back to the trucking world is that they're using basically smart contracts. Okay. And these are just agreements between two entities. They're utilizing the ELD devices on there when they arrive. Okay. And then they're digitizing basically the bill of lading. And then when they make that exchange, they were having a 97% dispute on invoices between the companies. 97% of the invoices were in dispute. So that takes time, that takes people, that takes departments. Yeah. Okay? So now we're moving over to when they deployed blockchain doing this in Canada, it went down to 3%. Wow. There's your money.
That's huge.
There's the payoff.
That is huge. I was just taking a note there and also checking the time. We're going to have to move it along. I think we have one last question, then we're going to move into our two questions at the end that we always do, technology alike and a mind-blowing event. One thing that I want to get your opinion on is, what are the challenges that industry faces today before we see mass adoption? I mean, I was involved with the internet back in the 90s. And back at that time, it was really more or less just a brochure online. And it wasn't until we got into the 2000s where the internet really started to sink its teeth in. And it wasn't just a .com, it was an e-commerce. And then now we just call it commerce. There's no more e-commerce, physical commerce. This is just commerce because it truly is ubiquitous now. So what are some of is there one or two or a handful of just challenges that industry is facing right now before we get this adoption at scale where we can see these benefits which you just talked about?
Yeah, really good question. And I like to quote Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And he was opening up the 2018 World Economic Forum. And he was quoted as saying, "The pace of change has never been this fast, yet it will never be this slow again." So your analogy of how the adoption of the internet, this will go a lot quicker. All right. So one of the challenges with blockchain today is that, and I'm going to talk about this kind of the manual world, really the pencil and the computer kind of analogy here, is that we have in blockchain, we hear about some of the larger ones. What's happening, like with Lattice, they'll be typing up a CVS file, okay, by hand and uploading it to the blockchain. Okay, it's pretty manual today, and so there's not truth, trust, and transparency in that. So if I type up "it's organic," I heard Frank Yarnis, he as you said at one of your events, he said there is more organics being consumed in this country than it's been grown.
Exactly. Yeah, a little over marketing there.
Yeah. So part of it is really, do I really trust the information going on there? So we're really looking at the digital convergence of things. How do things get inputted up? What's the truth? Do I have to manually do things? I can tell you is that this year there'll be 31 billion new IoT devices in use this year alone. Okay, so it's really that digital convergence. And I'm using some products, and I use digital markers. I can use them all the way from in our product, the TrustLink product. But one of the interesting ones I'm using is RFID. So as product moves through the supply chain, and then what I'm doing is we digitize that, create a digital twin, and as it moves through the supply chain, those critical tracking events can be auto-loaded to different customers. And so you actually get truth, transparency, and traceability. One example, the beef processor, what happens, he puts it on a third-party logistics company's trailer, and they make 3 to 5 stops. So in this case, they were making 3 stops. What happens is the driver pulls up. The driver doesn't unload. It is the receiver that opens up the back, breaks the seal, brings in the product. So then they close up, seal it up, and the guy drives off to the next place, the next stop. So one of the problems is premium beef can go for $1,800 a case. So a whole pallet was missing at the next stop. Through the blockchain, I was able to see that it got offloaded at the previous stop, 5 minutes away. Okay, driver was able to go back, pick it up, redeliver it, saving a ton of money. And there are estimates between $250 to $650 to redeliver a product. Doesn't matter whether it's paper cups or premium. Right. It costs the same amount to be able to redistribute that. So digital convergence of things will make blockchain more trusted, more truthful, and automate, because you don't want people having to do something different.
Got it.
I mean, I literally could be doing this and having this conversation for another 30, 40 hours. This has been amazing. And it's really helped me kind of solidify my thoughts around blockchain and taken some of the angst out of it. And I hope that everybody else kind of feels that same way. Like Reed alluded to, we wrap up these podcasts with two questions, and I'll take the first. Right now, what is the favorite technology that you're using, whether it be in your work life, your personal life? Mine, and I've used this example before, is I got my kids iWatches. So now I know wherever they are, but also they're learning to communicate with me. So it's this great thing. So Don, what is your favorite technology right now that's out there?
Great question. I would have to say that would still be my cell phone, my smartphone. Okay. Not because it's just a smartphone, is because I can do an app and I travel all over the world and I can read menus. I can communicate with people. I don't have to go in and join one of the, let me learn Spanish for 6 weeks or something. And then I can go in and muddle my way through it. I can speak into my phone. I can push a button and it communicates directly. And they can do the same thing with me. And that's
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we talked earlier about communicating and have a standard language. I mean, It's the GS1 of language is the cell phone for me. At least the app is.
That's great to hear. I love that. I really love that example. So the last one here is tell us something that's mind-blowing about blockchain. Something that, just blew your mind when you learned it related to this blockchain environment.
Yeah, I'm going to say, really when Bitcoin was first used, okay? And that actually happened May 22nd of 2010. And they used Bitcoin to buy 2 slices of pizza. So what they spent on that was 10,000 Bitcoins to be able to do that. So just
10,000 Bitcoins, not one Bitcoin, 10,000.
10,000. All right. So think about an operator at a pizza shop, and they sold their first pizza, and they got the original dollar on the wall from 1962, and it's framed. It's got so think of that person had put their Bitcoin up there and kind of put it up on the wall. I checked with the price of Bitcoin this morning, and so for one Bitcoin goes for $59,364. So that sale alone today would be worth $593 million plus dollars.
593 million. As you were doing it, I had my calculator out in front of me, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Right. Wouldn't that blow your mind?
Yeah.
Mind
Mind blown. I can't even afford one Bitcoin.
I'll get you out for a pizza, okay? I'll spring for a pizza when we get
to Exactly. Don, we can't thank you enough for spending the time with us today. You dropped a lot of great knowledge on us. I mean, just the fact that the food industry that you're in, you brought it up a couple times. It's a 2% business. Margins are tight, so looking at things like this really help out. It's a competitive advantage. I look at my father was a truck driver, and I would go on him all the time. Out on runs with him all the time, and we'd have our grilled cheese sandwiches wrapped up in tinfoil sitting on the manifold of the diesel engine. And when we got to our stop, we'd take it off the motor and have our break. I'll never forget those memories, right? But this is a tough business. This is a very tough business, because if you have one big snafu, it can have a cascading effect when you're dealing with 2% type of margins. I love the fact that you brought up handoffs are the error-prone areas. And that's not just with shipping deliveries. It's with data handoffs as well. And then we need to do that. And then you brought up that the analysis from the data on the blockchain, with the Canadian example, that they just started pulling this information. They were able to quickly and more accurately analyze the information, is just giving huge improvements to the efficiencies, which have a big impact on the bottom line, especially if you have a 2% business. and we've been talking about it since the pandemic has hit, is this resiliency. So having more visibility and stuff. There's so many great things. I would love to get your opinion on driverless trucks, but that's for a totally different episode, especially being a guy in Florida, because I know that there's a truck manufacturer in Florida that has those trucks on the road right now. But Don, on behalf of us here at Next Level Supply Chain and GS1 US, we just want to thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US. If you enjoyed today's show, you can subscribe to our feed or explore more great episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to share and follow us on social media. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.